The following episode depicts gun violence and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Just after 9:30 p.m. on July 3rd, 2012, crowds are gathered along the lower end of Grafton Street in Worcester to watch the city's annual Independence Day fireworks display. And the fireworks show, happening at East Park, about a mile away, is just getting underway. Jonathan Kapolka is standing in a parking lot near the entrance to Walgreens pharmacy. He's with a large group of family and friends. With him are his wife and two daughters. In one of the most brazen and violent acts in recent history in Worcester, a man wearing a ski mask ran up behind Jonathan, shooting him 3 times. Jonathan fell to the ground and died. His killer ran away up Grafton Street. And for over 10 years, Jonathan's murder remains unsolved. Welcome to Unsolved Worcester. I'm your host, Dan Yeager. In today's episode, we look at the murder of 33-year-old Jonathan Kapulka on July 3rd, 2012. Kapulka was a known gang member to the Worcester Police Department, but multiple reports said he had left the violent lifestyle to focus on his family and career. He had moved to Southbridge with his wife and 2 young daughters. In 2011, Kapulka had started a small detailing business on Canterbury Street in Worcester called Quality Touch. By all accounts, he had managed to stay out of trouble until his past caught up with him. He was shot and killed in front of people he loved. A week after Jonathan's murder, City Manager Mike O'Brien told residents of the Union Hill neighborhood that the killing was, quote, criminal versus criminal, gang versus gang. 10 years later, a makeshift memorial to Jonathan still stands near the entrance of the Walgreens parking lot in Worcester. A small white cross with a red flower tied to it is hidden behind some bush, and a Walgreens sign promoting same-day pickup. Unsolved Worcester will take a deep dive every Tuesday and Thursday into unsolved murders and missing persons cases under investigation by the Worcester Police Department's Detective Unit. We will be looking to the past, to unsolved murders as far back as the early 1950s and 60s. The approach to Unsolved Worcester is this: shine a light on each of these cases, put a life behind each victim's name, and provide a timeline of events and important details, and ask questions that still need to be answered. Our goal is to remind residents of the Worcester area, both past and present, that there are dozens of unsolved homicides and missing persons cases that need resolution. We hope we can be the spark needed to solve a case. There were dozens of witnesses to Jonathan's murder, large crowds, with more than 150 people standing toward the bottom of Grafton Hill watching the city's fireworks show from East Park, and more witnesses watching from their cars on nearby side streets. Weeks after Jonathan's murder, the 7th homicide in the city that year, police came to the conclusion that Jonathan's killer put on the ski mask just moments before he fired his weapon into the back of Jonathan's head. Police believe the killer could have been among the large crowd watching fireworks, and likely was seen by many witnesses before putting on his mask. However, after the shots were fired, people near Walgreens went running away from the scene, while the killer ran up Grafton Street towards Billings Square. And in all the commotion, potential witnesses could have missed their opportunity to identify Jonathan's killer. Police took several witnesses back to police headquarters to be questioned, but received conflicting reports about how many shots were fired. Police responded immediately to the scene, lining police tape around the block in front of the Walgreens and creating a barrier of police cars along Grafton Street, blocking neighbors in the area from getting too close to the crime scene. A white tent was pitched around and above the crime scene. In the days following, police interviewed numerous witnesses and canvassed the Grafton Hill area, trying to put a name to the shooter. Police urged anyone that was in the area to come forward with any information they might have, ultimately coming up empty. As we've seen in the past few episodes of Unsolved Worcester, we continually find connections from one case to the next. There are similarities and coincidences found throughout each of these unsolved cases. In early 2008, Jonathan Kapulka was one of 10 gang members, along with his brother Alan, arrested in a major drug raid following a 10-month investigation which netted guns, thousands of dollars in cash, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and prescription drugs. Jonathan was arrested on multiple firearm and drug charges, including using a firearm in a felony and conspiracy to violate drug laws. According to a report from the Telegram and Gazette, police said the drug bust and Jonathan's arrest was the result of, quote, heightened focus on drugs and guns in Worcester following the double homicide of Luis Acevedo and Andrew Robinson on Halloween night in 2007, just 5 months before the drug raid. Unsolved Worcester explored the murders of Luis and Andrew in episode 2 this season. The 2012 murder of Jonathan Kapolka is among the more recent unsolved murder cases on file in the Worcester Police Department's detective unit. However, unlike many of the cases we've already covered in Season 1, and most of the cases we will cover in the next several months, there was very little news coverage of Jonathan's murder. Most of the coverage happened the night of the murder and in the first few weeks after July 3rd, 2012. We had to do a deep dive into Jonathan's life through police records, and many hours following the online response to his killing more than 10 years ago. Much of what we found in the comment sections and online community boards was this: Jonathan did leave the life of a gang member behind, but for how long is unknown, and he was still being targeted by rival gang members. And the repercussion of walking away from a life of violence only led to more violence. Before we go, as we just mentioned, there was very little publicly available information on Jonathan's case. As we start working on each of these stories, it continues to surprise us just how little information there is on Jonathan's murder in 2012. Just 10 years ago, compared to vast pages of newspaper coverage and online information for a murder in 1967, nearly 60 years ago. And Jonathan's episode will likely be the shortest episode on Unsolved Worcester over the next year. With the extra time we have, we would like to address some questions we've received about our approach to each episode, like why we aren't trying to solve the cases, why we don't do one-on-one interviews and others. While we did request information from the Worcester Police Department for each case, and as much as we would like to look at these case files, Massachusetts state law states the case files are unavailable to us due to investigatory exemption. When we did request copies of these case files, Police said because the records are related to an open investigation, providing the records would compromise the department's investigation of the case. Further, the public release of information contained within the records could alert suspects of the investigation's activities. So now, as we say at the start of each episode, it's up to us to piece it all together, spending hours, days, and weeks finding anything we can to tell each victim's story. When we wrap Unsolved Worcester, we hope this podcast can be a hub of information for people to turn back to over the years to get details on each case. And who knows, maybe we will be that spark needed to solve some of these cases. Thank you for listening. Anyone with information about the murder of Jonathan Kapolka are asked to contact the Worcester Police Department Detective Bureau at 508-799-8651 or send an anonymous text to 274-637. Write TIP, WPD and your message, or send an anonymous web-based message at worcesterma.gov/police. I'm Dan Yeager. Come back next time as we look at the unsolved murder of Nereida Melendez, whose body was found on Bell Hill one day after she didn't show up to her graduation ceremony from North High School. Be sure to visit Unsolved Worcester on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Unsolved Worcester. Listen to all episodes for free at unsolvedworcester.com and podcast streaming platforms including Spotify, iTunes, and more. Special thanks to Harvest Design in Northborough, the extensive research provided by Alex London in the Worcester Public Library, the Worcester Police Department, the City of Worcester, Ron Scott at New England Sky Picks, and our sponsors for making this possible. The Unsolved Worcester podcast music is provided by Tom LaBelzik of the Worcester Jazz Collective. This episode of Unsolved Worcester is written and produced by Pat Sargent. Drone footage provided by New England Sky Picks. Videography and editing by Colin Turner. Victim images are courtesy of the Worcester Police Department. Sponsorship information announcer is Chandler Walsh. Unsolved Worcester website and logo art by Harvest Design. Visit harvest-design.com. Be sure to check out the video for this episode with exclusive aerial views and more on our Unsolved Worcester YouTube page. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.